Where I did my glasses. Guess I left my glasses at home. Stupid.
Not the ones that are on your face right now?
But how come I can't see out of them? Thanks, Dave, for that. Appreciate it. Okay, we're on, everyone. Welcome to folks at home listening. This is the Goffstown Planning Board meeting, scheduled meeting, the agenda for Thursday, December 10th, 2020. I'm going to ask Barbara Griffin, who's on the line, to speak first. Please, Barbara.
Thank you, Tim. My name is Barbara Griffin. I'm chair of the planning board. I was not able to attend in person, and I've asked Tim Redmond to conduct the meeting. In my pseudo absence, I am present but not in the room, and I didn't think it worked well before when I conducted it remotely. So thank you, Tim, and Tim will now read the governor's order that allows us to do this all electronically. Thank you.
Okay. In accordance with Governor's Emergency Order Number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04, the Planning Board will utilize emergency meeting provisions of RSA 91-A to conduct meetings through electronic means while persevering, to the extent feasible, the public's right to notice of such meetings and ability to obtain and listen contemporaneously. On the meeting this evening, you can listen contemporaneously on the telephone by calling 766-5646. Once you call in, you'll need to enter the participation code 785645, followed by the pound sign. Please make sure you enter that pound sign after the numbers to participate. If you're having difficulty calling in due to number to participate, please call 660-5000 for assistance. Copies of the master plan update can be found on the town's website at www.goffstown.com, or they're available at the planning department. Please contact Planning and Economic Development Director Joanne Duffy at joanne.duffy@goffstownnh.gov. Okay, so what we are going to start with then is with our first item of business, which is noticed, is the master plan update public hearing. We have two representatives from Southern New Hampshire Planning with us tonight. One is in the gallery here, who will step up and speak, and another one is on the line. And I'll ask both of you to identify yourself for the record before we begin.
Excuse me, point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I think we need to identify ourselves on the phone.
Oh, good. Thank you, Phil. So all votes will be taken by roll call, and we'll start with identification, starting with folks in the room here. Joanne?
Joanne Duffy, Planning and Economic Development Director.
Gail Lebrecq, alternate and recording secretary.
Tim Redmond?
David Pierce, an alternate member to the board.
And we'll start with Barbara Griffin.
Barbara Griffin,
Peter?
chairman of the police.
Sorry. Peter?
Peter Georgantis, Selectman's rep.
Jim? Jim?
Did you ask for me? It's Jim Raymond.
Thank you. Kimberly?
Kimberly P.
Karen?
Karen Hughes.
And Phil?
Phil, that's me, and I'm alone.
Have I forgotten anyone? Thank you. Okay, so thank you to Phil for a point of order. We will proceed now with identification of the folks that are here to talk about the planning master plan update, beginning with the gentleman who's with us to start.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Cameron Perlman. I'm a regional planner with the Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission.
And on the line, please.
Good evening, this is Zach Swick, Senior GIS Analyst with the Commission.
Thank you for both of you. And we also have Nancy Larson, who has joined us. She represents the town in the planning and zoning, in the zoning department. So, could you please begin, sir?
Yes. So last time I was here, we went over the master plan and went over some edits. Those edits have been made, and in addition to those edits, several maps have been included in your packets. And the reason Zach Swick is on the phone is to help answer any questions anyone might have on the maps. Otherwise, I'll be able to, I can run through them, or if anyone has any questions on them, we could start with questions as well.
So just to clarify, we have a map which is a conservation land, future land use, existing land use, flood zones, disturbed land covers, wetlands, transportation. Those are the maps you're talking about?
Correct.
Thank you. Everyone on the phone, everybody has the maps, I assume.
Except the conservation land, which was handed out this evening.
Okay, the conservation lands map was passed out to us this evening, so
Another one with the conservation
Yes,
land?
I do. I have.
I'm sorry the folks on the telephone don't have it.
I would also like to mention that, and I can put any of these maps up on that screen if anyone's interested.
I think we'll just go with your description.
Okay. I also do want to note that since we last met, the planning board developed a vision for the master plan, which is included on page 2. I think the planning board did a good job. I think it lends itself nicely to the plan, and I think it reflects kind of the public outreach that was done for the master plan, and it sets a good tone for the future of planning in Goffstown. So
Before you keep going, can everyone on the phone hear what's going on at home?
Yes.
Okay, good, because otherwise we'll move the speaker closer or something.
okay. I'm not sure. I guess I could kind of briefly run through some of the changes that were made since the last meeting.
Okay.
There were several edits that I didn't mark down. That Barbara Griffin handed me a kind of a handwritten note of edits of the master plan, and some of them were things like grammar or spelling, and those have been fixed. But some of the bigger picture ones, so the vision has been added. The percentage of land use has been added, and we had a kind of a discussion about the difference between land cover and land use. And so Zach Swick worked his magic with the assessor's database, and as well as I believe data from UNH, as well as the Granite system. So we've included that. It's
Cam, is
Yes.
there a need to further explain under land use, the difference between town land and municipal land? I'm assuming municipal land might be where parcels that a building is on?
yes. If this would, okay, I apologize for this. I do believe that section had been updated to,
Well, I'm not concerned about the percentages.
Okay.
It's the,
if you would like a
The term.
definition, if that's what
yeah,
you mean.
I'm just inquiring, would it be clear, 5 years from now, or whenever someone's reading this, that the average person will understand the difference between town land and municipal land?
Okay,
Just think about that.
okay.
And while we're on that page, I'd like to see a better definition in the pie chart. From our copies here, it's hard to distinguish between several colors of blue.
Okay.
It might
That's
be an artifact of our printer upstairs, but I'll
Yeah,
let you
that's
worry about that.
No, that's a good point, and Zach wanted me to bring that up with the maps as well. Not only about the content, but stylistically, do the colors make sense to you, that kind of thing. So I want to put that out there. I do also want to mention, David brought up regarding the median earnings on that same page from the census data. I did stick with 16 years and over. That's what the census kind of provided, and then kind of also rationalizing in my head, 16-year-olds can make an income. So I think it makes sense here.
I think we also need to identify what page you're talking about each time you talk about a page, so people can follow.
I apologize.
So
about
we're on
that.
page 3 right now.
That is correct. The
Okay.
community profile on page 3.
Tim, this is Barbara. If I can just clarify for the record and for anybody that might be listening, we had a previous work session with Southern New Hampshire Planning on this master plan, and as part of the planning board's decision to accept or reject the master plan or adopt it, we hold a public hearing, and in fact, this meeting tonight is occurring as part of that process and is the public hearing. So after the planning board hears the presentation from Southern New Hampshire Planning on the plan, which we're hoping is pretty much in its final stage, absent some minor modification, there will be the opportunity for public comment so that the planning board can consider that before it goes further with consideration of the plan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. Some minor tweaks were made based off of comments on page 11 of the community facilities, as well as getting rid of the double page 11. So the page numbers are now correct. Thank you for that. Some minor tweaks being, I think what used to be called Town Hall on page 11 is now Town Administration. Under the age-friendly Goffstown,
Page what?
page 13, or I believe it is page 13. There's a strategy in here that regards sending out information to the town. And I think before it said with a tax bill, and I apologize, I'm trying to find it right now. I'm sorry, I'm blanking on this, but
Yeah,
actually,
and Cam,
it
I
does-
forget what page that showed up on too. It was a reference to sending residents information via a tax bill, and that was an awkward phrase.
I apologize, I can't seem to pinpoint it, but
So could you just briefly tell us what
yeah.
what
So
happened?
before there was language. The idea is that to send information to town residents, and this came from the age-friendly report that was done via an intern for the town of Goffstown through an age-friendly program, and the language wasn't clear because the language.
It's on page 15.
It's on page 15, domain 7, the fifth bullet.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
So is that what your recommendation is, to send it through a tax bill?
I apologize. I thought, I hope I didn't put it somewhere else, but it should read through information that is sent to residents annually.
That's
So,
under domain 8, the last bullet, or, yes, the
Yes.
last bullet.
Okay, so that is a small error on my part. So under domain 7, send important information to the tax bill, that should be deleted.
Strike
And then-
that?
Strike that, and then under domain 8, the last bullet is the new addition.
Okay.
Thank you, Cam.
Thank you, Joanne, for that.
So why is it in the community and health services when it should be communication? Isn't that communication? Shouldn't that be in domain 7?
It could be in domain 7. I also thought it could fit through health services as the people who might actually be sending out some of this information.
Let's,
If you would rather it be in domain 7, I could make that change.
I recommend it's in both.
I agree.
So that's up for discussion.
Okay, so that is a quick fix, and I can do that. Excuse me. And I believe, apart from some of Barbara Griffin's edits, kind of throughout the plan, those were the major changes that have been made.
So basically 2.
Okay.
Okay, I'll open this up to discussion from board members. Anybody have something they want to speak about? Questions?
I'll start. This is Dave Pierce, and I draw your attention to page 8, education, first paragraph. There's 2 sentences in the first paragraph that seemingly conflict each other. One says, since 2015, school enrollment has remained relatively consistent. The next sentence says, since 2015, school enrollment has declined.
Thank you, David. This is Cameron. I do know the history behind this. In fact, Joanne caught this some time back. That first sentence in there, since 2015, should be taken out, and the data, the next sentence, students since 2015, school enrollment has declined by a negative 20.8%. That sentence should remain.
Do you think it should have an explanation with it, that that's when Dunbarton left town, or is that not a fact? Is that where the 20% of the students went when Dunbarton decided to go to Bow High School? Because it's a statistic that is stark, and I think it should come with an explanation.
Okay.
I mean, board members can weigh in on that.
I think they
Good.
left before that.
That's a good point, Tim, because I remember recent budget hearings where the school SAU said that our enrollment is increasing, which is different than the whole rest of the state. Many other communities are losing students.
Well, we should verify that information that I just stated. If in fact Dunbarton did leave, and that was the reason for the 20.8% decline, it should be, that information should be validated and stated in the statement as to why it went down 20%.
Okay.
Cam, you can check that very easily with the SAU.
Yes, I can. And the numbers below it are from the SAU, but I can, if that is the reason for this decline over the years,
It was a one-time decline, not a over the years decline.
This is an over the years decline, and this is strictly the high school that
Correct.
Nancy's referring to.
Yep, it's worthwhile to point out that in that 5-year period of school, one town left.
Otherwise, someone's gonna read this and say, what's wrong with the school? How come it went down 20%? My opinion.
And my last comment is, Dave Pierce again, is on page 22. The bottom left paragraph about civic buildings, it makes reference to a location from the state prison east to the Piggery, strike New Hampshire State Prison and simply put Henry Bridge Road.
Okay.
So that no longer exists.
Tim, before you leave that, I'm surprised David, the engineer, didn't pick this up, but on page 8, the sentence says, since 2015, school enrollment has declined by negative 20.8%.
Well, yes, I did mention it,
Did you? I missed that. I'm sorry.
yes.
Okay.
It's my feeling that I've heard the SAU maintain that the enrollment is relatively consistent.
No, it's the negative, but you don't decline by a negative number.
I see what you're saying, Jim. This is Cam.
Take out the
Yep,
negative.
Strike the negative sign.
Or decline, or,
Yes, it's two negatives.
it's two negatives, yeah, Jim is correct.
Thank you, Jim.
Yeah, they
David,
don't
you
make a
should've-
positive.
Should have seen that. You're an engineer.
Was somebody else trying to speak there? No. Okay, thank you. So David, we're on page 22 again?
Yep, that's it. Make
Henry
reference to
Bridge Road.
Henry Bridge Road. Thank you,
Thank you.
Tim.
Wonder how many people know what the Piggery is?
I don't. What is
I
it?
The
do.
last little building on the left side, the one's down in the hollow. That's where the pigs used to be kept at the county farm.
Ah,
See that? So
learn
that, even
something
that's,
every day.
It will make for challenging reading 10 years from now.
could require an explanation from you, so you better know what you're gonna tell people when they call in and ask.
Piggery. Never heard of it.
Call David.
Anything else from any board members here? How about board members on the phone?
No, all set.
You have anything for us,
Is
other?
there any public on the phone?
Well, I'm not sure who some of these people are. There's a Zachary Swick,
He's from Southern New Hampshire.
okay, and then there's an Ed Law, N.E., I don't know.
That's Karen Hughes. I was just calling from my work phone.
Okay, thanks, Karen.
Yep.
And then I know one of these wireless callers is Barbara, and then there's a second wireless caller with the last 4 digits of 6990.
That's Peter.
That's Peter. And
That's
then-
me, yes.
Okay, thank you, Peter. And then there's a person, last 4 digits of 4088.
That's Jim Raymond's phone.
Okay,
That's me.
So there's no public.
that's right.
Kimberly Peace is also on the phone.
And Kimberly, her name shows up, so,
Phil.
yes, and
Okay.
Phil shows up,
So there's no other people calling in at this time.
correct.
So if the board has no more questions, I think I should open the public hearing. All right, at this time, I'd like to open the public hearing for anyone who would like to call in and comment on the master plan update as we have it in front of us. We'll give it a minute here to make sure everybody has a chance to call in.
While we're waiting, Mr. Chair, Cam, we also have before us these maps, different features of the town. Do they actually be assembled in this report, or where do they appear?
Excuse me. Yes, so some of them, were, to answer your question, yes. For example, the transportation will go, just after the transportation chapter, the existing and future land use, in that section, conservation, in the conservation section. But then there are some other maps, for example, the flood zones, the distributed land covers, and wetlands that may not necessarily fit into the narrative of the plan, but could be good tools for the town and the planning board. So the planning board may not want to include every one of those in the plan. They could be included as an attachment to the plan, if that would work for the board as well.
My recommendation is that those miscellaneous plans might fit under community profile.
Okay, I think that's a good fit.
Or we could also ask Director Duffy to advise Cam on which area. I think a wetlands map certainly should be in a conservation area, don't you believe so?
We can go over that.
Okay.
Make that decision. As long as they're all in there, that's all that matters.
Do you have any comments? Because Zach, the person who created the maps, is on the phone. Do you have any comments regarding the maps in general?
Mr. Cartographer.
Any?
Hi, this is Kimberly. I have a question.
Go ahead, Kimberly.
I'm sorry if you've covered this already, but I'm just curious, when I look at the future land use map, that you lumped conservation agricultural instead of keeping them separated as you did in existing land uses, and I was wondering why that is.
Hi, this is Zach. Oh,
No, go
so
ahead,
I'll
Zach.
go ahead and answer that. Okay. In that particular case, it's because some of the conservation easements are also agricultural easements. It just happened to be the way the data worked out. That they could be broken out easier for existing land use, but not for future.
So it seems like some of the agricultural turned into suburban residential.
That's correct. As part of when I did this, anything that was not conservation agriculture or rural residential, I turned the agricultural into the intended future land use that I saw in the previous plan. If the board would like to go a different direction with that, I can easily make that change.
Well, Kimberly, on the next page, on the existing land use, they are separated. So would you prefer that they were separated on the future land use as well?
I don't know. I guess that maybe that's a discussion for everyone to kind of think about. I know that there are people in town that are very proud of our agricultural background, and I know this isn't a zoning map, so it's a little bit different than zoning, but I don't know. It just sort of seems kind of stark to me that we lost that as its own category. And I don't think I don't see anything obvious that I disagree with what you've done with the classification for future land use. I don't know. Maybe I'm just the only one that notices that, but does anybody else think anything about that?
No, I do, and it just seems that they should be consistent.
So I can speak to that a little bit. Part of the consolidation there was the number of categories that we were getting in the future land use. You can see there's 10, 11 there. So part of that was just to consolidate the colors so it would make them easier to read.
So how do you describe civic and institutional? What do those words mean?
Some of them are cemeteries.
Say again?
Civic or
I'm sorry.
institutional for these purposes are any public or nonprofit entities that are not paying taxes. So this could be municipal land, it could be state land, it could be a church, it could be a fraternal organization, which is a nonprofit. It's to show areas on the map that are serving a public good and are outside the tax base.
Thank you. So Kimberly, did you have more to go on what you were talking about? I interrupted you, I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry. He needed to answer. The question was to him. I guess to Phil's comment, and I understand there's a reason why you have different categories, but it's kind of hard to compare when things jumped, in colors and existing land use. I see some of the ones that
like appear obvious. I don't know, like there's a commercial on the existing land use. I don't know, that might be like Stonebridge in the upper northwest corner, and I see that that's converted to rural residential, and I don't know, it's just hard to, I'm looking back and forth trying to identify where the changes are, and it's a little tough because the categories shifted.
Yes, and so this is Cameron. And so some of these changes are based on the future land use section of the master plan. They're also based off of the previous future land use map. So if you would like more of an explanation, I think we could do that. But so that, you know, just for that example in the upper, the northwestern corner, you know, the plan identifies, you know, certain areas of town for, you know, future conservation and future commercial expansion and things like that.
Anyone else? So just a very small point for for our map expert on the phone. You see where you have Goffstown Village and you have High Street coming up out of Goffstown Village?
Yes, sir.
You have a little tiny blue dot there, which is a civic institutional spot on the right-hand side, which is where I assume, which is where the water precinct has their water tank. That's where High Street,
Okay.
That's where High Street actually ends, right at that water tank. Just so you know.
Okay. So that's so this these street data comes from the state, so I'll have to go ahead and make sure that they know that the road changes at that point.
Thank you.
Thank you. And if there are if you notice any other blue civic institutional on either map that is out of place, or you know to be a park or something like that, if I didn't have enough data within the assessing data or the public databases, if I could not classify it, I could only go by on who the owner was. So for some of those we're missing. If you see an outlier like that, please let me know.
Anyone else? We have anybody called in on the public hearing,
Oh,
Nancy?
Mr. Chair.
Okay, so if there's no one on the line for the public hearing, I'm gonna close the public.
Jim.
Go ahead.
All right, Jim, this is Barbara. I close the public hearing, but I think the discussion we just had sort of begs what we're doing with the future land use map, when the reality is the existing land use map shows we're basically built out. If you look at where as Kimberly pointed out, if you look at the residential pieces, which the reality is our agricultural zone turned into residential, the reality is there aren't big tracts of land there that are conservation open space that would be available for future development. And it is sort of interesting that there's still a map layer, frankly, that even looks like the future land use one does. But, I understand it, and I think it's appropriate to have it in it, but I think it's something for the board to keep in mind, and I just wanted to point it out. Thank you.
Okay, we have anything else for discussion on this master plan update at this time?
Well, this is Jim. What's our next action? Are we going to have Cam and Zach make the revisions and then bring it back to us to adopt? Are we adopting it subject to those revisions, or this is an important piece of work? At some point we've got to move it and move on, so we can put it into effect.
I'm going to defer to Barbara on that, if you would, please, Barbara.
Hold on, I pulled over. Joanne, I believe that the intent was to have this public hearing and to make a decision as to whether or not we were going to accept it, correct, Joanne? We were trying to get this done by the end of the year.
Correct. We were hoping to finish this up.
I mean, we've had a public hearing, we haven't received comment, we had a previous meeting on this that was available to be seen. And I think what we've talked about tonight as far as changes or comments on it are pretty minor and don't in any way impact what a final product would look like. So I think that's where we're at.
So on that basis, I move that we accept or adopt, rather, the master plan as presented, subject to the exception, the non-material revisions outlined in the meeting, and thank the Southern Hampshire Planning for a job well done. Thank you.
Okay, I have a motion.
Jim's motion.
We have a motion to adopt the master plan as presented by Jim Raymond and seconded by Peter Georganis. Is there any discussion on the motion? So we're gonna leave these small items to you, Joanne, to make sure they get taken care of and properly put in?
Correct.
Thank you. All right, we're gonna have a roll call. Yes, sir?
On Zach, on all the maps we're looking at, this is Dave Pierce. I'd like to see a little stub of a line which represents the boundary lines between our adjoining communities. You show an inch of area outside of Gulfstown all the way around. There should be a representation of those boundary lines.
They seem to be on there, David, but in very light lines.
I was gonna say, I think they're on there, they're just too light. I will go ahead and make those darker.
They should be the same symbology as the ones around Gulfstown.
All right, Joanne,
We'll make that change.
got that, Joanne?
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Very good. Okay, we have a motion on the floor that's been seconded. We will move to a vote at this time if there's no more discussion. We will start with Phil,
Yeah, yes.
Peter,
Yes.
Karen,
Yes.
Kimberly,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
Barbara,
Yes.
and Tim votes yes.
David, I'm
You're
non-voting
not voting
tonight.
tonight. We have a full house.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, David. So the motion to adopt the master plan as presented is passed unanimously. We thank you for your work.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your time. Thank you, Joanne, and Barbara especially. So I guess the next thing is, Joanne, tomorrow I'll send you at least the plan edits that we discussed,
Okay.
and then we'll send you the map ones as soon as we can, and then we can discuss just delivering larger scale maps and making sure you have all the electronic versions and
Okay.
that type of stuff.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Thanks.
And
Thank you very much.
Gail's taking careful notes, so you can always double check with Gail to make sure no points get missed.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, the next item on the agenda for this evening is the 2021 proposed zoning amendments public hearing. I think that, Joanne, could you please give us a rundown on where we are?
Sure. So amendment number 1 is just to add a few definitions. One is brewer, the other is brewery, brew pub, and nano brewery. And you all had asked me what the difference was between all of these types of uses. And in your packet, there should be something entitled zoning amendment number 1. I think it's on the back page of the sheets with the zoning changes on there. And so a brewery is the largest of the uses, and they can go up to 15,000 barrels per year. It's basically a wholesale beverage manufacturer and distributor. They could have a bar and restaurant if they so choose, according to the state statute. Typically, in a large building like that, you would need a sprinkler system, a loading dock, three-phase electricity, public water and sewer. And the average size building, it would, if they were to produce at full capacity at the 15,000, would be 22,500 square feet of space. Now, this all is dependent on how often they brew and the size of their equipment, but what I'm showing you is an average. A brew pub is up to 2,500 barrels per year, and they usually have a small restaurant attached. They typically need about 3,750 square feet of space. And I just wanted to go back to some of the variables that come into play when someone's building one of these sorts of things. So it depends on the size of their equipment, the annual production, the number of barrels per beer produced every year, the amount that they're storing of dry goods, the kegs, the bottles, the equipment, how many walk-in coolers they would have, how many restrooms, and the ceiling height. The ceiling height in the brewing area needs to be at least 12 to 14 feet. So there's lots of things to take into consideration when building or looking for space for one of these types of businesses. And the smallest of the three would be a nano brewery, and they can only do up to 2,000 barrels per year. They don't need to provide any sort of food, and it's much less expensive to obtain a state license. It's usually a startup type business, and they do not have commercial distribution. And if they were to run at full capacity, they would need approximately 3,000 square feet of space. So that gives you an idea of.
Joanne, I don't understand no commercial distribution. What are they doing with their 2,000 barrels per year?
It's limited to, well, I don't mean by commercial, like, you know, it's not like they're shipping it out somewhere. They may sell it in some stores, or they may just sell it themselves. But it's not like a big-time production where the other ones could actually get into the, you know, selling it out of state and that type of thing. It's really more of just some startup type business trying to figure out how to brew beer and make it. Usually it's more of a part-time thing when people are first starting up with something like that. So the square footage that they would need to obtain would be at least 3,000, and that it could become expensive to even find a place to do something like that. But again, if someone were just doing, you know, the smallest would be 3 barrels, which would be about 300 to 450 square feet. So that would be more realistic.
Anybody have any questions for Joanne, what she's just described to us, other than what David has brought up?
So the reason you all wanted to know this information is because you were looking at the zones and where these types of businesses would ultimately go. And that's why on the other sheets that we had handed out showed the proposed or the potential of where something like that would go. So for a brewery, which is the largest of the various types of breweries, brew pubs, whatever they're called, permitted use would be only in the industrial district, because it's basically like that type of operation, a wholesale operation. And for the others, the brew pub and the nano pub, the recommendation would be to have a conditional use permit in the village district, a village commercial district. In the commercial district, it would be a permitted use. In the commercial industrial flex district, it would be a conditional use permit. And in the industrial district, it would be a permitted use. So those are the recommendations.
I have a question.
Bill, please?
Yeah, on the, when you mentioned the brew pub and the brewery, the Nano, the fact that they have a full-service restaurant in there, wouldn't any place that we allow a restaurant to be a brew pub would be allowed?
Yes, so currently you can have a restaurant with a special exception in the agricultural district and by conditional use, you can also have it in the RSBOD district. The other ones are the same as proposed that I had just mentioned, except for in the CIF district, a restaurant currently is a permitted use. With the brew pub or the Nano pub attached to it, I have it down as a CU, but, you know, feel free to make any changes that you feel that you'd like to do.
Why did you determine that a CU would be appropriate in those two zones, Joanne? What was your reasoning?
Because the commercial industrial flex district is more of a mixed-use district, and being that there would be a pub included with the possibility of residential on the same lot or the same area, I thought it might be wise to have the planning board be able to have some control over it with the conditional use.
And the same for the village commercial, that's the reason?
Correct.
Same reasoning? Phil, did you hear that, Phil?
Yes, I did.
Any other questions from board members on that reasoning?
Tim, this is Jim. I have a question that goes back to the definitions. If you look at the definitions in RSA 178, they have other criteria than just quantity of production. And the question is, do we want to incorporate the whole definition of what, for example, a nano brewery is? I mean, we don't say that. We don't say, we define it by capacity and then reference the statute. But if you want to limit it to all the other restrictions on the nano brewery, I think we need to incorporate expressly the definition in the statute. You know, for example, a nano brewery, I'm reading it, sale for consumption on the premises shall be limited to 1 4-ounce glass per label per person. If you want that in your zoning, I think you have to state that we're incorporating all of those statutory provisions that define a nano brewery, and we don't do that the way it's written now. I think a 4-ounce glass is woefully inadequate for anybody, but that's my own view on the state's restrictions on nano breweries.
So
But if we
Jim,
do it,
I'm sorry.
I agree.
it makes sense to me. We're just not picking up all the other statutory limitations on them, which is a licensing statute. It has a different purpose.
So Jim, would it be adequate to leave what Joanne has written now and add, instead of saying as allowed by RSA 178-12, and then you would say, and all other conditions set forth in 178:12-A, would that cover it?
Yeah, if you wanted to, I'm not sure we want to, but you could.
We can always waive.
Well, no, that's not a good way to write ordinances, though, and we don't have the authority to waive, and the ZBA does. So
Right.
I'm not unhappy with the way it's written. I just want you to know it doesn't pick up the way Joanne's written this, all the other requirements of a nano brewery, for example, or a brew pub. Nano breweries are not really intended to have retail servicing on site, except for the miserly little 4-ounce glasses. I'm not urging that. I just want to point out that we have picked up all the statutory limitations.
Joanne?
We can certainly do that if that's what you'd like. I thought by referencing the RSA that it would cover all of that, because once you start listing things, if the RSA were to change, then you have to go back and redo it, so.
But it's the way the thing is wording, as allowed by, as opposed to as defined in.
you
I think you need to tweak the wording if you want to pick up all those other restrictions. I'm not suggesting we do necessarily, but they're not, the way this is worded, I don't think this ordinance picks up the other statutory licensing restrictions of a nano brewery.
Okay.
Maybe we can circulate to everybody the definitions in this, where it appears in the statutes, to see what I'm talking about.
Jim, if we do add that, what you had just said, defined in, and then list the RSA, does that then cover all of these other items that are in here? Because,
Everywhere you reference the RSA, you have to take as allowed out and put as defined by.
as defined
In each,
in.
in the brewery, the brew pub, and the nano brewery,
Okay.
where you have reference to the RSA.
Okay,
But I'm not saying we want to do that. I'm just pointing out what we don't do. I think this is fine. We put a capacity limitation,
when the,
and whether they serve it in 4-ounce glasses or big glasses, I don't particularly care.
but
But
there-
if people do, we can look at the statute.
but doesn't their state license has to comply with this RSA as written?
But they do, but zoning and licensing are different things, and licensing could change. I think this is fine the way you've written. I just want to point out we want to incorporate all the statutory restrictions. We have to do it more expressly, but I'm fine leaving it as is.
Okay,
We just might be able to get bigger glasses out of it. Because how we define a nano brewery may not be the same as the state.
Right.
This is a zoning definition, not a licensing definition.
right.
But are you making it less stringent, Jim, or more stringent than the state statute?
I think we're making it less stringent.
And what are we allowed to do are we allowed to?
You can go crazy and have 6-ounce glasses instead of 4-ounce glasses of beer at them.
I'm asking you, is a municipality allowed to do anything that is less stringent than an RSA, or I thought it was we had to be more stringent in the RSA?
Let me give you an example. The Department of Agriculture licenses dairy cows. In our zoning ordinance, we could define cows to include horses and pigs. We're free to do that as a matter of zoning. We can apply whatever terms we want to whatever we want. We're not limited by the state. Now, we're not overriding the state's licensing authority. We're just defining what we're going to allow in our town. And we could allow pigs and cows and horses and call them all cows as a zoning matter.
Well, I'd like to see somebody trying to milk them.
Well, yeah, or drink them. We can define a nano brewery any way we want for zoning purposes, and whether or not it meets the state definition is none of their business. It's not going to give them a licensing right that they don't have under state law. It's just a matter of what we're going to permit as a land use in our town. That's why I think these are okay for our purposes. If you want it more restrictive based on the state licensing system, I think we have to say that. But I'm happy the way it is.
Yeah, no, I'm fine with it the way it is.
Excuse me, Jim, if I understand what you're saying is we can have whatever zoning we want to have. If a business comes into town and wants to open up, they still have to potentially meet state regulations.
They do. It's just that they may fall within the nano brewery and into a brew pub definition for state purposes. We may call them a nano brewery for zoning purposes. But you're right, we're not. They still have to do the state license.
So the way it's written sounds good to me.
Yeah, I think it's fine. I just want to point out what's not in there, and I'm not sure we need it in there. I want it in there because I like bigger glasses of beer.
Well, thank you, Jim, for bringing that all up.
I'm sorry. I like beer.
Okay, Joanne, would you like to move on?
Okay, thank you. So amendment number 2 basically covers what I just read off of that chart that you have, which says what is allowed and what zones it would be allowed in. This is, the first one is manufacturing, construction, and wholesale, which would be the brewery and the nano brewery. They would fall under allowable uses in that particular category, which I had stated before. Village commercial would be a conditional use, commercial would be permitted, CIFZ would be conditional use, and industrial would be permitted. Moving on, does anybody have questions on that? Any questions? Okay. Number 3 is same thing, only this one covers the brew pub and the nano brewery. And it explains which sections they would be allowed in commercial and industrial district as permitted use, and village and commercial industrial flex as a conditional use. Number 4, I'm proposing that we pull number 4. Nancy and I talked this afternoon, and although the language in the bill that changed this appeared to include zoning meetings, it does not. Therefore, we would have to make changes to this, and I think at this point we should just pull this off. And you didn't seem to be too much in favor of it last time when we had the workshop, because you felt that it may exclude some folks who don't have the internet and wouldn't be able to look up the public notices on our website. So that's my recommendation, is to just.
But before you move on, does anybody have any comments or questions on pulling amendment number 4?
No, it's just I tend to agree to pull it.
Okay, thank you, Phil. Anyone else? Okay, Joanne, move on, please.
Number 5, Connor is here if you have any questions on this one. This was the accessory dwelling unit shall be constructed within or attached to a single-family home. And the change was, or a detached accessory building on the same lot. So this amendment would allow for a detached accessory dwelling unit on the same lot as the principal use. Any comments?
An accessory dwelling unit is clearly defined? in our
Yes,
terms?
it's already in our regulations.
Thank you.
That's also known as an ADU.
Anyone have any comments on number 5?
This is Jim. We've talked about this, but are we imposing any additional restrictions? It's still subject to a conditional use permit, if I recall, Joanne.
Yes, I believe so.
exception.
Special exception. All ADUs
But
need
there's
to,
no additional requirements for a detached accessory dwelling to qualify for the special exception?
No, there would not be, other than it has to be on the same, single-family, same lot as the single-family residence. It would follow the same restrictions as a regular ADU. It would share the septic and the well if it's on septic and well. It wouldn't have, it wouldn't be able to be on its own if the single-family house were to, say, be demolished or whatever. Connor?
Yeah, I mean, this
Identify yourself for the record, please.
my name is Connor Lev. I'm the senior coordinator administrator, AmeriCorps Vista member
Thank you.
working under Derek Warren. This would basically just be very clear about what it takes to build a detached ADU in the town, because right now there are already special exceptions for detached ADUs that have to go just a little bit further. So this is just eliminating those extra steps and making it very clear to those that would be interested in building one of these or converting a already existing unit into a detached ADU.
Joanne? I don't know if it's been discussed or not, but has it been discussed that we would have to have some sort of prohibition for them being subdivided and separated into a separate building on two different parcels? We've had that discussion?
I don't think we've had that discussion here.
Is it a topic worth discussing?
Well, the single-family home and the ADU need to go together. So unless someone were able to maybe obtain a variance, Nancy, do you think that's possible?
One thought I have is if the detached accessory dwelling unit would be required to, as an attached accessory dwelling unit would be required to share the same septic system, same tank, same leach field as the primary dwelling unit, then I suppose in theory there could be a subdivision, and it would just be a really small house, but it would need, as a condition of that subdivision being recorded, this house would need to have a whole new septic design and plan approved and installed. That's how I would imagine the solution being if that scenario were to ever come up.
It would also need to have ample acreage and setbacks.
And its own driveway.
Mhm.
So I'm just bringing this up for discussion for the board members, are we creating any type of a scenario where we're gonna be backed into a corner, where we're gonna be requested to subdivide one of these, and we are gonna regret allowing this to even happen?
I think we might. I'm thinking of an application we had before the zoning board just very recently, and it was denied. And it wasn't a detached ADU, but they wanted to create an ADU that had 1,600 square feet versus what's allowed of the 1,800.
800.
Huh?
800.
800, yeah. Is that what I said? What did I say?
18.
Oh, 800, yes. So they basically wanted to double the size, and they were gonna use the whole garage, whereas they already had an ADU upstairs above the garage. They wanted to convert downstairs and make basically a whole apartment. It already had its own entrance off another street. It already has separate utilities. And, I mean, that's the prime thing where they could end up trying to maybe not make it, not subdivide, but in this case, make it a duplex.
So I'm just bringing this up for discussion. If board members are happy with the way this is written and you don't foresee trouble, fine, but I kind of see a problem down the road.
Tim, this is Jim. I have a question just on what are we doing tonight. Are we just presenting these to the public and then we will discuss them later? Because this is a proposal of some controversy, I guess, within the board. But if this is just to present a public opinion so the public can comment on these and we'll deliberate on it at a later date. We can save our comments till then.
Thank you, Jim. Barbara, do you concur with that procedure?
Hold on, I have to get to unmute. Yes.
So that, you concur with Jim's procedure to accept comment tonight and then discuss them later?
Yes.
Thank you. So that's what we'll do.
Can I ask when that would be?
That's questions for you, Barbara.
What's the deadline on this, Joanne?
Well, typically we schedule 2 hearings. Tonight is the
Right.
first hearing. If there are no changes that happen tonight, you can vote on it and not have a second hearing because we haven't received any petitioned articles.
Public comment. Yeah.
There is a meeting that we have scheduled on the calendar for January 14th if something were to change tonight, or, you know, you didn't want to discuss it. We also would have the opportunity at next week's meeting if you were to just deliberate.
Well, I mean, I think there was some discussion on it among the board. I don't know that it needs to be continued to January, given that there was no public comment. But if the board is, you know, more comfortable, as Jim suggested, and having a further discussion on it, I'm trying to think, I looked at the packet that got mailed out for next week. There's not that much, right?
There's 1 hearing. Well, it's actually 2 separate applications, but it's all one project.
So, you know, we just need to sort of come to some sort of conclusion as to whether or not people think yay or change. I mean, I'll defer to the people there in the room and Tim, your consensus of the board. I mean, we've got people who think issue, no issue.
Well, I can take a straw poll among the members of the board, including members on the phone, if we should continue to discuss this at our next meeting. So I'll start with Phil.
I've thought a lot about this since it was first brought up, and I'm okay with it because even if this went down for a subdivision down the road, they'd have to meet all the requirements. I mean, they'd have to have the acreage, they'd have to have the side yards. So I really don't have an issue with it.
Peter, your opinion, please.
I agree with Phil.
Karen? Karen, could we get your opinion, please?
Is she on there?
Maybe you just muted yourself, Karen?
A.E. Lawrence, or something like that. A.D. Lawrence.
Barbara's still on.
I thought I heard a noise that someone dropped off.
Okay,
Yeah.
we did too, we weren't sure.
And
So I'm
Peter's
gonna
still
go to
on.
Kimberly, please.
I'm okay with this one.
We've heard from Jim, if you'd like to repeat anything, Jim?
Well, I have concerns.
I have concerns myself. So, if the rest of the board members will, I don't know if that's a vote or not, but if the board members will allow us to have further discussion, I would prefer to have that.
Okay, so let's put it off for 17th. This isn't like we need to send out notices on it. We'll continue, so this will get continued to the next meeting.
Thank you. Joanne?
This is Karen joining back in. I apologize for that. I accidentally hung up on you guys instead of pressing the unmute button.
Okay. So do you know what the question was, Karen?
No.
The question was considering the detached accessory dwelling unit. I brought up a question, is this going to become a backdoor for people to come back and try to subdivide that accessory unit off and come up with 2 buildings on 2 separate lots? And a couple of members, including myself, felt we should discuss it at the next meeting and make a decision, and a couple of members were okay with it. So, do you have an opinion?
I think discussing it at the next meeting is fine. I think more discussions are better than less. So
Well, thank you very
that
much.
would be my vote.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, Joanne, could you please move on?
Okay, amendment number 6. would be eliminating section 5.2.5, which reads, no new exterior entrance or exit to an accessory dwelling unit shall be constructed facing the front of the single-family residence, which means that they could have an entrance facing the front of a single-family residence.
Any comments on that from board members?
Yeah, I'm okay with it.
Okay.
Tim, this is Jim. I suggest we put that in the same category as the prior one. They all link together. In fact, I may be okay with it, but they are all part of the same topic of discussion. So I'd suggest we bring them up together next meeting.
Okay. Anybody else want to weigh in? So Joanne, if you'll tolerate it, we will continue the discussion on amendment number 7. Is it number 7? No,
Number 5 and number 6.
number 5 and number 6.
So, did you want to just table everything and deliberate next week on all of them, or just those 2?
Well, I thought the idea was to go through them for a public hearing tonight as well, so you have to go through the rest of them, don't you, anyway?
Right, I'm just asking,
Well,
Are
so far 5 and 6, that's 2 requests.
okay, so you'll be voting on the other ones then,
I think we vote on them all at one meeting, wouldn't we?
which would be
The next,
the
The next meeting.
17th? Okay. Number 7 is amending section 3, allowable uses, 3.72 as follows. Single, so N2 is crossed out, so it would say single-family dwellings, more than one single-family dwelling, and then the rest is crossed out, or more than one two-family dwelling, that's eliminated. May be located on a single lot only pursuant to section 13.5, open space development. Any questions?
okay, anybody have any questions? Move on then, Joanne, please.
Amendment number 8 would be amending section 4.3, table of dimensional regulations, by eliminating 0 yards as part of a condominium project or 0 side yards in the village commercial district with masonry construction, and adding for multifamily dwellings, refer to section 4.4 for minimum side and rear building setbacks.
Any
This
comments?
is Jim. I'm glad Nancy and Joanne wrote that the eliminates language had no clear intent and makes no sense. For years, I've been wondering what that meant. I was afraid to ask. Everybody else probably knew what it meant but me, but glad they shared my wording. I support this.
Okay, anybody other than Jim have comment? Thank you, Joanne.
And the last one is amendment number 9, as proposed by the planning board, by amending section 4.4, multifamily dwellings, with the following changes. 4.4.1.1, the maximum, and then strike out lot and replace with building coverage, and then adding maximum number of dwelling units per buildable acre as specified in section 4.3, table of dimensional regulations. So it would read,
I can't find that one.
Page 4 on the handout.
I have it on
Page-
page 3.
Well, I have it on page 4, the one in front of me.
It's
that's all.
on, yeah, there are 2 different handouts.
You got it on page 4?
Well, I just got it on one that's on the desk here that I was working out of, Phil. Let me look in my packet.
Phil, it's not,
No. You,
Phil?
you talk about the
It's on-
packet that came.
In the packet,
That
it's on the back of the second page, and what it came in the mail.
The one that came in the mail today.
On the one when I got one, I don't know when I got it, but it's
No, the-
it's stapled together, and on the back of it,
The regular mail, not the email.
the one that came today is for next week's meeting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's on the document, 2-page document that reads at the top, 2021 zoning amendments, public hearing, proposed zoning amendments, and then it starts off with zoning amendment 1 and Joanne's definition for brewer, brewery, brew pub.
Right. That's 2 pages stapled together.
Yeah.
Right, and it's on page 4.
On the back where it says 4411.
That's correct.
Okay, I saw there's no 9 there. That's why I couldn't find it.
Yeah, it starts on page 3 at the bottom.
And it continues.
Well, okay, but there's nothing that says 9. There's nothing written in there. It's just that's why I couldn't find it.
At the bottom of page
He
3.
was looking for a bubble 9.
Oh, bubble, okay,
Written in the margins.
okay.
Right, because I was following everything else along, and we had 8, and I'm looking
Yeah.
for 9, and that's why I couldn't find it.
Yeah, I noticed that today as well.
Okay,
Little circle.
so is everyone clear on what we're talking about? Anybody else have any questions? So Joanne, could you please continue then?
So the remainder of that article reads 4.4.1.2, the dimensional standards for minimum lot size, minimum lot frontage, minimum, and then it's changed front yard, building setbacks, strike requirements, and maximum height. And 4.4.1.3, unless otherwise specified in section 4.3, table of dimensional regulations, the side and rear minimum building setbacks for multifamily structures shall be the greater of the underlying setback for that zone or the length of the building side most parallel to that lot line divided by 2.
Well, that's clear.
A lot more clear than it was.
Any questions or comments on 4.4.1 through 4.4.1.3? Okay, Joanne, could you take whatever, is there, that's just an explanation underneath there, the housekeeping amendment?
Yes, that's just an explanation. That's the end of the articles as proposed.
All right, does any board members have any more discussion on these items before I open the public hearing?
Well, I have a question on the 4413.
So Phil, could I just open can I open the public hearing, give people a chance to call in while you're talking?
Sure, that's fine.
Thank you. So at this time, I'd like to open the public hearing on the 2021 zoning amendments. And if anybody wishes to speak, please call in on the line that was stated. The phone number is 766-5646, participation code 785645 with the pound sign. All right, while we're waiting, Phil, please.
Yeah, can we have a rendering, a drawing, an example of how this is done, 4413, so that we could see that maybe next meeting?
Question for you, Joanne.
Yeah, I think we could just draw something.
Yeah,
I mean, even if it's an existing something that we have, just to show how this calculation is done.
Okay.
Sure. We have some projects out there that we can use as examples.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Bill, are you suggesting that graphic would be part of the article on the ballot?
Me? No. I'm just saying for myself and maybe somebody else. But I would just like to see how this is calculated, how this is done.
And that confusing language is already in the zoning ordinance. The only thing that I'm suggesting to clarify it for administration is, administering the ordinance is the italicized text. It says, unless otherwise specified in section 4.3, table of dimensional regulations. Because there are other setbacks that need to be taken into consideration, and the language currently only addresses the side and rear setbacks for multifamily structures, and it doesn't say anything about what's required for the front setbacks. So it's just a reference to that table of dimensional regulations, so it points people in that direction that you can't ignore the front yard setback, the minimum required front yard setback for whatever zoning district you're in.
So, what's not in what's in the regular print, starting from the sides, that's existing currently?
Unfortunately, yes.
Okay, well then that's fine. If it's already in there, I didn't realize it was already in there. I just trying to picture this in my mind doing this, and that's why I was asking. But
No, it's
That's
an
fine.
excellent question, and you're not alone.
okay.
Is there anyone else? Has anyone called in on the public hearing?
No, sir.
Anybody else have any other questions or comments before I close the public hearing here, or? I think I'll just go ahead and do it anyway, since no one has called in. We're gonna close the public hearing on this. We are gonna have a further discussion, so the public hearing will or will not be reopened, Barbara? Is it closed as of tonight?
You would close it as of tonight.
Yeah, but are we gonna reopen it at a subsequent meeting?
No, it would just be your deliberation.
No, I would not. This was the night for the public hearing. We're just continuing our session, much like if we had gone to 11 o'clock and adjourning, and we're continuing it.
Thank you. So the public hearing is closed, and we will discuss this at a future meeting. Thank you.
For purposes of deliberation.
For purposes of deliberation. Thank you for that clear.
Before you adjourn, I just have one question.
Go ahead.
The Bog Road apartments, recently, the new owner, or is not the owner yet, but the applicant that came in for the extension, Dakota Partners, they have received funding from New Hampshire Housing. They're planning to close in May. They're trying to wrap up everything that needs to be done prior to then. One of the original approvals on that project said that they needed to post a bond for the interior roadway. And Sarah discussed this with Derek, and they felt that a bond would not be the appropriate requirement, that the town would rather have a letter of credit. But since this was in the approval, I wanted to bring it to this board to see if they were okay with changing that. We do give the option of either one in our regulations. I'm not sure why the board was very specific about a bond, and this is a private development with private roads. So I just wanted to run that by you.
Well, I'm gonna ask Jim Raymond, is a letter of credit more difficult or less difficult than a bond if collection is required?
If we use a self-calling letter of credit, so-called,
Right.
where it doesn't lapse, I prefer a letter of credit. A bond is it will result in litigation with the bonding company. Very seldom do bonding companies step forward and do the work, in our experience. Letters of credit, you call the bank and they give you the money. So, and there's not much better than money. So I prefer a letter of credit. I have no idea why we would have required a bond back then. It may have been just loose language, but I think we can deem that change a non-material amendment because it actually, in my mind, improves the security given the town. Complete the improvement.
All right, based on Jim's assessment of this, I'm gonna take a straw poll among board members to see if they concur.
Oh, I was going to second his motion.
I didn't know it was a motion. Was it a motion, Jim?
Gail is very good at creating motions out of my stream of conscience muttering. So yes, we can treat that as a motion.
Okay, we'll treat it as a motion, and Phil has stepped up to second the motion. Any discussion on the motion? We'll do a roll call vote, starting with Phil.
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Kimberly?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Barbara?
Yes.
And Tim votes yes. It passes unanimously. So we'll substitute a bond with a letter of credit.
Thank you.
Is there anything else for discussion tonight? For those of
Yeah,
you who have-
motion to adjourn?
Not yet. Just for those of you who have minutes in your packet, we will discuss the minutes at the next meeting, because there's 3 sets of minutes to vote on, and then it's just, we'll get them at the next meeting. So is any other business for this meeting this evening?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Phil Devanza to adjourn. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second.
Seconded by Karen. She beat Peter. Roll call vote. Phil?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Kimberly?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes, and I want to congratulate him running a good meeting under short notice.
Thank you, Jim. Barbara?
Yes, and thank you, Tim.
Okay, thank you also. And Tim votes yes. So the meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank
Good night.
you.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Good night.